today I want to talk about Lost in the Neverwoods by Aiden Thomas. This is a really strange review for me because normally I don't do full standalone reviews on books that I give like 3 stars. Normally it's either like my 4 and 5 star, like I really love them, or like my really low like rant reviews. But this one falls like pretty in the middle as far as like my feelings on it. But then I had some pretty strong feelings on this as well. About like certain parts of it, I just had really strong feelings, and they probably aren't the best, right? And it's going to be really hard to talk about these fully in depth without talking in spoilers. So what I'm going to do is the first half of this video is going to be my like spoiler-free review like I normally do. And when we get later in the video, I'm going to put up like a spoiler warning, and I'm just going to kind of go into all of the issues that I had with this book and just discuss them openly while spoiling main plot points of this book. So be aware that we're going spoiler-free, spoiler. So if you get through the spoiler-free part and you're like, I don't know if this is for me, like, let me see what the issues are, great. If you've read it already, I know it comes out really soon. If you've read this arc already, then go ahead and watch it, but otherwise, I don't know. I can't tell you to or not to watch the spoiler section because this was an arc. It doesn't come out till the 23rd of March, but I just kind of wanted to get my feelings out there while they're fresh in my head. This was a NetGalley arc that I received, and sadly, I didn't love it as much as I thought I was going to. But that's okay. We can't love them all, right? So I did, like I said, give this 3 stars. It is a standalone fantasy Peter Pan retelling, and that excited me. I was really excited to see a new, fresh take on the Peter Pan myth. I love Peter Pan. I love all the mythos surrounding Peter Pan. It's just one of my favorites, like favorite fairy tales. I love the Disney version. Like, I just love Peter Pan, right? But this just didn't do it for me, I don't think. And I'd heard great things about this author. This is this author's sophomore book, I believe. Cemetery Boys was their debut, and I've heard nothing but good things about that. And I really still want to read Cemetery Boys. I just haven't gotten around to that one yet, but hopefully I feel more positive about it than I do about Lost in the Neverwoods. Like I said, this book is a Peter Pan retelling. We follow Wendy, who went into the Neverwoods by her house with her 2 little brothers, John and Michael, and they disappeared for months. And Wendy is the only one that turned back up after a few months of being missing. The boys were nowhere to be found. And she kind of goes back to her life, goes back to her family, and then we kind of pick up 5 years later. We follow Wendy when she's turning 18, and we kind of follow her through her day-to-day life until we find out that now there are more children going missing in the Neverwoods, and everyone kind of looks to her for answers because of her brother's case, because that was never solved. She had no memory of these like months that she was missing, and everything just draws a blank. So everyone just kind of side-eyes her and looks at her for some answers. So that's the basic synopsis, right? And then we also have Peter Pan. Like, Peter Pan comes and like tries to talk to Wendy and kind of help her with this like missing children's case. So there's that. When all these children kind of are going missing, Wendy is actually someone who like volunteers at the hospital. She volunteers to read stories at the children's unit, and she tells stories of Peter Pan and Neverland, and she thinks it's all just fake. It's all in her imagination. It's stories that her mother used to tell her. Until one day, Peter Pan himself actually falls out of the sky onto her truck, and that is kind of what sets a lot of these events in motion with the missing children, with Peter Pan, and it really sounds like it's going to be an interesting story, and it could have been. It could have been so good, but for me, it fell flat. There was just a bunch of things I did not like. The number one main thing that made me probably the most upset and I just didn't like were the parents. Wendy's parents. They were terrible, right? Like, I get it. It's supposed to be like this depiction of grief and child loss and not knowing what happened to your other two children. But obviously, they never sought any therapy in these 5 years. They've kind of completely neglected their daughter that did show back up, right? Like, she makes comments about how she's the one that does the laundry and the cooking and, like, takes care of the household as a child. And, like, the parents are just kind of, like, nonchalant, non-caring. They work all the time. The dad's really gruff and, like, strict when he wants to be. And the mom is a nurse, but she just works all the time and, like, never spends any time with her daughter. So I'm like, that's not how it should be. Like, I get it. Grief, right? Grief affects us all differently. But having seen others who have lost children, I have not gone through this myself. I am a parent of 2, but I have never lost a child, thank God, because I don't know how I would handle it. But having seen people that have lost children, this didn't seem to be normal to me. If you disagree, please let me know. I'm trying to cover this as sensitively as possible, but it didn't seem normal to me. Most of the time, from what I've seen, people go and get family therapy and they work through those issues and they don't completely brush off their other child. If anything, they bring them in closer, right? Like, that's what has happened in a situation that I'm, personally aware of. I'm not going to say who or what, but, like, people very close to me. And yeah, I've never seen that happen. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen, and grief doesn't shut you down and make you not want any of your children, but it was just really jarring, and I didn't like that at all. I also thought the townspeople were a little strange, right? Like I said, they kind of side-eye Wendy because she has this memory loss. But a lot of times in trauma and very traumatic situations, like, that would be pretty normal. Like, she can't remember what happened when she went missing. Normal. Like, but like I said, no one apparently seeks out therapy in this world. No one seeks out doctors or therapy, even though, like, mom's a nurse. Like, no one's going to a mental health professional at all. Like, the cops just kind of gave up on this. Like, it's just weird to me. And all these townspeople, like, kind of blame her, it feels like, right? It's just very strange, and I did not like it. I also thought that it was very predictable. The twists with it being a Peter Pan retelling were very predictable. It's very much in line with the Peter Pan mythos, like, things we've heard over and over again about Peter Pan. And I was really hoping for, like, a fresh new take on Peter Pan, and this just didn't give it to me. This just gave me stuff that I already expected and stuff that I already kind of knew about Peter Pan and I knew was part of his myth, and it was just like, okay, and? Like, I really wanted a fresh take. I will say, though, there were things I liked. I liked that it attempted to show that parental grief and trauma and suffering, and that just that real family trauma at, like, the loss of a child, and, like, your child's missing and you don't know where they are. Are they dead? Are they alive? Like, what's going on? I liked what it attempted to do. I just think it fell flat. I also really liked the writing. I think Aiden Thomas is a good writer. That's why I'm still excited to read Cemetery Boys. The writing was done well. It hooked me. It was beautiful prose, and it was, pretty straightforward, but it was still well written. I just loved the writing itself. So that makes me excited to read Aiden Thomas's other books. I just didn't like the characters, and I thought the story of this was very, very predictable. Now, we're getting into spoiler territory. I am going to talk about my issues in depth and specifically, and this will spoil the book for you. So if you don't care about spoilers, keep watching. If you've already read it, keep watching. I personally am a person that seeks out spoilers. I know I'm weird. When the Avengers movies came out and I knew I couldn't get to theaters because I have kids and no one to watch them, I just I sought out spoilers because I wanted to know what happens, and I wanted to spoil myself knowingly, right? Same with the Star Wars movies. I knew what was going to happen because I sought out the spoilers before I even saw it. I'm a weird person like that, but spoilers don't bother me at all. So if you're like me, or if you've already read it, keep on watching, and we are going to talk about Lost in the Neverwoods and my real issues with it. Like I said, the parents. I don't understand them. As I said earlier, as someone that has never lost a child, I cannot comment on this only as somebody from the outside looking in, and I've just never seen a parent react like this. I've seen parents shut down for temporary times. I've seen them pull their kids really, really close, maybe too close. I've never personally seen them push their other child away and just completely zone out of their life. Like I said, it could be something that isn't common but does happen, but these people need therapy. Everyone in this book needs therapy. And it confuses me, like I said, that the mom's a nurse and, Wendy is going to school and wants to be a nurse or a doctor, and nobody thought to seek out professional mental health help after the disappearance and memory loss and all of the trauma that has happened. Nobody thought about that? Really? And then at the end of the book, when we find out what actually happened to the boys, right? We find that out, and it's this big reveal that they were murdered on the day that Wendy went missing, and Wendy was taken off to Neverland by Peter Pan so she could forget her grief. It's the parents just changed. You're oh, big reveal, we found out our kids are dead, and then they're nothing ever happened. Complete change in personality as far as pushing Wendy away, and now they're good parents again. Especially the dad, because he was very annoying. He was very gruff and rough and real annoying, and he seemed really pissed off all the time. He didn't want to take Wendy down to the police station. He's oh, I have to take a day off work, take you down to the police station, because a dude fell on her car and knew her name, happens to be Peter Pan, but still, he was just ugh, this again. It was just so strange. And then at the end, when you found out they had died in the woods, and it was just oh, okay, cool. Let's work on a relationship. No, just no. It was just too much, right? And the fact that the boys had been dead from the beginning, I thought was very cliche. I thought it was very predictable. Obviously, the Peter Pan mythos that at least I'm aware of, very, very heavily leans into the fact that Peter Pan is the harbinger of child souls. He is the one that crosses them over, and Neverland is kind of their purgatory. And that's exactly what it was in this book. Neverland is purgatory. Peter crosses the souls over that have died a traumatic death. And all of this started because Peter Pan fell in love with Wendy and brought her into Neverland, the only living person to have ever gone into Neverland. And it just kind of starts to disintegrate. He loses his shadow. All the things that we come to expect from a Peter Pan myth. Like, so I kind of wanted more. I also found the romance in this book between Peter and Wendy to be epically creepy. So we start off with Peter falling on her truck, and he's like 14, right? Like maybe 13, 14 looking. Wendy's 18. And then as it progresses, he like grows really quickly to be like older than her. And then like there's like this weird romantic moment, like, and it's cute, but it's creepy, right? Like he just went from 13 to like 18 in like a week. And at first she's talking about looking at how young he looks, and he looks like, you know, maybe he'd be a freshman in high school, to kissing him when he's older, but like a week later. It was just too much for me, right? Like the romance didn't need to be there. They could have left that out completely, and I would have maybe thought it was better. I also thought it was really creepy that Peter crept back into the mother's bedroom, because he knew the mother as a child. He crept back into the mother's bedroom and would imitate the voices of the boys while she slept to like calm her dreams. Like, that was just weird. Like, me no likey, right? And then we find out the murder of the boys. Like, that was pretty obvious too. Like, because there's this moment where they're talking to the neighbor, right? The police are, and Wendy sees it, and their kids had gone missing in this like mass of missing children. And they're like, oh, do you have guns in the house? Just like random question. Oh, do you have guns in the house? And the neighbor guy gets real irritable, like real nervous. He's like, no, I don't have guns. We have no guns in this house. I haven't had guns in this house since. And then he kind of looks over and sees Wendy. He's like, since, and like doesn't like finish his sentence, but you know what he's talking about, like since the day that she went missing or whatever. And you're like, huh? That was weird. And like, I guess you're supposed to think nothing of it, but like come to find out he was drunk hunting in the woods without a permit in non-season time and shot the two boys. And then he buried them. And somehow they were never found by the idiot police in this book. Because 5 years later, these boys were still buried in the woods under a tree, and no one ever found them. They allegedly like searched the woods. I'm like, that don't make no sense. They'd have cadaver dogs. They'd have, you know, why wouldn't they have like cadaver dogs and a better search team? And at the time they were searching, there would have been freshly overturned dirt. Like, that didn't make any sense how he did not get caught until then, right? Just as somebody that worked in the legal field and stuff like that don't make no sense, ma'am, sir. Nope. He would have got caught just burying them in the woods like that. Like, easy. And I don't know, I didn't love it. I had so many issues with like relationship dynamics and the way trauma was perceived. And like, I get that at the end there's like this sigh of relief, like the parents finally know what happened and they can have closure, but that they should have gone to fucking therapy years ago. Like, that I think is my biggest gripe with this. Why would the nurse not go to therapy? But all in all, I don't know. Read this if you want to read it, but like, I didn't. I finished it. I gave it 3 stars. It might be less than 3 stars, but I was being nice. I don't know. Just wasn't for me. And hopefully you enjoyed this little ranty part at the end. If you made it this far, let me know. If you watched the spoiler aspect of this video, just let me know in the comments that you watched my rant. Because I just don't know how I feel about this, and I just needed someone to talk to about it. But anyway, this book does come out on March 23rd. If you are interested in it, then go check it out. I wouldn't waste my money on it, but libraries are a thing. So go check it out. Aiden Thomas is a pretty good writer, and I'm excited to read like Cemetery Boys or something else that they have written. All right, well, thank you for hanging out with me. My name is Jessie, and I will talk to you later. Bye.